You are not aware of the creature you have created inside yourself. I am not talking about a monster, nor a hero. I am talking about something far more dangerous. Someone who has learned to exist without depending on anyone. And that, to the world, is a threat. You have spent too much time alone, and now the rest don't know how to read you. They believe silence is emptiness, but your silence is a weapon. While they live suffocated by the need to be seen, you have grown accustomed to moving like a shadow, observing without being detected, learning to know everyone's weakness before they know yours. The problem is that most people cannot stand the idea that you don't need them. They want you predictable, dependent, fragile. They want you to run after their approval. But you have learned something they will never understand. When you need no one can control you. And that terrifies them. You have lived loneliness as others would live a war, with hunger, with fear, with nights in which your own mind tried to destroy you. And yet, here you are, breathing, whole, colder, sharper, more lethal. In silence, you learn to see how they speak without saying anything, how they smile when they want to stab you, how they contradict themselves in a single sentence. People believe words reveal the truth, but you know it is the pause that gives them away. In solitude, you learn to listen to what is not said. And when you see what others don't, you play with an advantage. You don't interrupt. You don't rush. You let them expose themselves. And then you act. The second pillar of your strength is the surgical selection of who you let in. You no longer seek to fill empty spaces. You seek lethal quality because you know that a mediocre ally is more dangerous than a declared enemy. You have stopped wasting energy convincing, saving, dragging those who do not want to walk. And although the price is high, you pay it without blinking. Because there is no loneliness more toxic than being surrounded by the wrong people. The third pillar is the most misunderstood, the power of anonymity. The ability to disappear from the radar while working on something no one sees coming. The world wants exhibition. You want effectiveness. They want quick recognition. You want results that cannot be torn down. You don't publish every move. You don't shout every victory. You don't show every step. You move in the dark because you understand that the most devastating blow is the one no one anticipates. Loneliness was not a punishment. It was a laboratory. It shaped you with patience, like water that carves stone. It forced you to know yourself on a level most will never reach. While they run from silence, you claim it as your territory. Because silence does not shut you up. It sharpens you. Noise distracts. Silence builds. And now every step you take depends on no one's approval. You own your time, your mind, and your will. What comes next is simple. Don't forget what the training taught you. Don't trade your independence for empty company. Don't give away your strategy for applause. Don't sacrifice your anonymity for a few seconds of attention. You have crossed an invisible border. You're no longer part of the herd, and once you leave the herd, you don't return. Because once you have tasted the strength born of being alone, you understand there is no turning back. Do you want to know the most unsettling part? That the world still doesn't know what you are capable of. And when they finally find out, it will already be too late. The power you have gained in solitude has a consequence that few dare to face. You become unreadable. And when you are unreadable, you are dangerous. People fear what they don't understand. And when they cannot predict your moves, they begin to make up stories about you. It unsettles them that you don't react as they expect, that you don't fall into the emotional traps they use on everyone. They don't know whether you are about to attack or simply ignoring them, and that uncertainty consumes them. Here's the truth they don't tell you. Unpredictability is a wall taller than any physical defense. An enemy who doesn't know what you will do loses before they start. But that power has a cost. And here is where many fail. The temptation to break your own silence. The anxiety to prove what you're doing, to make it clear you haven't fallen behind. That is a trap. The true player does not need to announce they are on the board. Every time you reveal your plans prematurely, you hand weapons to those who don't want to see you advance. That's why you have learned to tame the ego, to train it like a wild animal. Your ego wants to show off, wants applause, wants the quick validation noise offers. But you keep it caged, feeding it just enough to keep it alive, but never enough to let it rule you. This is where your training in solitude gains another layer: strategic patience. I'm not talking about waiting as a passive act, but about waiting while building in the shadows. It is the difference between the dreamer and the planner. The dreamer tells everyone, and in the end, their idea dies before it's born. The planner keeps silent, and when they appear, they do so with something so solid it cannot be ignored. You have understood that time is a weapon, that haste is a gift to your adversaries, and that every second you conserve your energy is a second they waste trying to guess where you are. And then something fascinating happens. You start moving outside the emotional reach of others. They remain trapped in the constant exchange of approval, validation, and judgment. While you operate on another frequency, you become someone who does not get dragged by petty provocations, who does not respond to every offense, who does not waste themselves defending their honor to just anyone. Because you have discovered that defending yourself from everything robs you of the strength for what truly matters. The one who defends against every attack is a prisoner of their enemies. The one who ignores the irrelevant becomes a fortress. It is at that point that solitude stops being a stage and becomes your natural habitat. It's not isolation. It's a base of operations. From there, you choose when to expose yourself, when to retreat, when to let others believe they have won, only to reappear when they can no longer react. This is something the weak do not understand. It's not about disappearing out of fear, but about calculating the exact moment when your appearance becomes a lethal move. Because here's the darkest secret you learned in silence. Real power is not in imposing yourself constantly, but in choosing when to do so. Power used all the time wears out. Power you reserve multiplies. And while they exhaust themselves trying to maintain daily relevance, you advance, slowly, relentlessly, invisibly, until one day, without warning, you drop the final piece. And everyone realizes the game ended long ago, and you are the only one who knew it. And when you reach that point, you begin to notice something that once went unnoticed. Most people don't act, they react. Their moves are born not from a plan, but from impulse. And that is where the ground tilts in your favor. Because while they move at the pace of their emotions, you move at the pace of your strategy. They get agitated. You observe. They respond instantly. You choose when to respond, or when not to respond at all. This cold control is the difference between just another player and the one who controls the board. What no one tells you is that this control has a dangerous route: detachment. The day you stop needing the immediate result, you become immune to manipulation. They can flatter you or threaten you, and your course will not change. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you are not a prisoner of the outcome. And that unsettles anyone who tries to bend you, because their entire arsenal is designed for those hooked on quick rewards. You begin to see that true luxury is not having more, but needing less. Less approval, less forced company, fewer distractions. You realize that everything you eliminate makes space for something more precise. It's like clearing a minefield step by step until only solid ground remains. And on that solid ground, every action you take carries more weight because it is not contaminated by noise or haste. And there arises another silent advantage: your ability to see people without the fog of desire or dependency. You see who lies without your pulse trembling, who makes promises without intending to keep them, who approaches out of interest, and who out of genuine loyalty. This filter is not something you can fake. It is an instinct that only develops when you learn to be fine without anyone. And it is relentless, because once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. Then solitude transforms into a kind of mental laboratory where you dissect everything: your mistakes, your successes, your limits. You don't observe yourself to punish yourself, but to sharpen yourself. Every weakness detected is a coordinate you mark on your map, and then you work to erase it. You become your own architect and your own destroyer, demolishing parts of yourself that no longer serve and raising internal structures that no one can tear down from the outside. This is where most cannot follow you. They need spectators to feel real. You can exist in an empty room and keep advancing because you understood that the world doesn't reward you for your noise, but for the precision of your strikes. And while everyone is busy competing over who shouts the loudest, you are building something that, when it comes to light, will need no introduction. It will be impossible to ignore. And here is where the game becomes truly interesting. Not because you seek to destroy others, but because the mere fact that you exist with this mentality makes the rest uncomfortable. It reminds them that they could be doing the same, that they could live without chains, but they prefer to stay tied. You, on the other hand, have already burned the bridge back. And when you burn that bridge, you discover something unsettling. You have not only stopped belonging to others, but you have also stopped belonging to the rules they follow. You are no longer governed by the social calendar, the fear of judgment, or the anxiety to fit in. You begin to operate with a kind of freedom that intimidates, because it is impossible to negotiate. They cannot buy you with flattery, nor paralyze you with threats. You have stepped out of the emotional market where everyone sells themselves cheap, and that makes you a player they cannot classify. Here is where your solitude becomes a strategic advantage few imagine. You control access to yourself. Not everyone sees you, not everyone hears you, and not everyone finds you. And when access is limited, perceived value skyrockets. Most spend their energy trying to be everywhere, but that overexposure makes them disposable. You do the opposite. You appear rarely. But when you do, it is impossible to ignore you. It is the law of scarcity applied to human presence. And that scarcity creates something few can generate: mystery. Mystery is a magnet that attracts, and at the same time, a wall that protects. You do not reveal your methods. You do not share every step. You do not allow people to predict the direction of your next move. Thus, your silence becomes an incomplete map that forces others to speculate. And every speculation is time and energy they spend while you keep building. But this power requires surgical discipline, because mystery is destroyed in an instant if you fall into the temptation of explaining yourself. Every time you justify your actions, you give up a piece of control. Every time you allow someone into your mind without earning it, you open a door that cannot always be closed. You have learned that not everyone has the right to know your motives, and that even the closest must earn the privilege of your transparency. And here you realize something others rarely understand. Solitude did not separate you from the world. It placed you in an elevated position from which you see the entire terrain, like a sentinel watching from the top, not because he is fleeing the battle, but because he needs to see the full map before coming down to fight. This height gives you perspective, and perspective is power. While they get lost in small fights, you see how those fights fit into a much larger conflict. It is then that you understand that solitude, well used, is not a refuge. It is a command center. And from that center, you choose every word, every gesture, every appearance. You don't play to win every battle. You play to win the war. And in that war, the one who controls the when and the how controls the end. And in that control of the end appears a concept very few understand: the art of not being seen until it is too late. It's not just about hiding yourself, but about shaping your environment so that your absence seems normal and your presence is an impact, like a predator that lets the forest get used to its silence before striking. While everyone seeks constant visibility, you become a blind spot, a space no one monitors because they think you are not an immediate threat. Until you change the rules in a single move. Here is where your mind, trained in solitude, begins to operate like an intelligence system. You analyze patterns, recognize weaknesses, anticipate reactions before they happen. You do it without haste, without the stress of someone who lives running. You have learned not to waste energy on useless moves, to let time do part of the work for you. Because you know time is an unyielding ally for those who know how to wait, and a cruel executioner for those who rush. And the most fascinating thing is that this mastery of time allows you to do something the rest never achieve: decide which battles are not worth fighting. Most confuse activity with progress, noise with impact, confrontation with victory. You have understood that some battles are traps disguised as opportunities, and that winning them would actually be a slow defeat. So you let them pass, not out of fear, but out of strategy. And that ability to stay out of the fight is in itself a type of victory they don't even recognize. This selective detachment begins to generate a deeper internal change. Your relationship with power stops being emotional and becomes functional. You no longer seek to prove that you can. You simply do what is necessary for your goal. You don't intoxicate yourself with the adrenaline of confrontation, nor cloud yourself with the euphoria of a quick triumph. You measure everything in terms of usefulness. And when power stops being a trophy and becomes a tool, the game stops depending on luck and starts depending only on your preparation. This is where your figure transforms in the eyes of others. Some will see you as an enigma, others as a silent threat, and many as a ghost that moves without leaving a trace, until everything is already decided. But what they don't understand is that you don't seek to be any of those roles. The only thing you seek is to execute your plan without distractions. And that, in a world devouring itself in its need for attention, is an act of absolute rebellion. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. And then you fully understand. Your solitude was not a period you survived. It was the training that turned you into an invisible architect of destiny. While others wait for the perfect moment, you manufacture it. While others fear being forgotten, you work so that when you appear, the world has no choice but to remember you. And just when you think everything is under control, comes the last lesson. It's not enough to master silence, strategy, and anonymity. You must learn to disappear, even from yourself. It sounds strange, but it is the highest point of personal power. It is when you stop fighting with your past, stop negotiating with your fears, and stop asking your emotions for permission to act. You become someone who observes themselves from the outside, who understands that life is a board on which you are both the player and the piece. And in that moment, you discover you don't need to prove anything. Because true mastery is not displayed, it is exercised. That is the moment when you stop following the world's game and start writing your own. You no longer chase opportunities. You create them. You no longer look for open doors. You build your own entries. You no longer wait for the right moment. You provoke it. And when you reach that point, you understand it all. Solitude did not take you away from the world. It gave you the keys to reconfigure it. So here is your call to action. If you have felt this message fit into your mind like a missing piece, don't let it escape. Subscribe to keep sharpening this mindset. Leave in the comments a phrase that sums up what hit you the hardest in this video. A phrase that only someone who has understood this path could write. And yes, I will read everyone, because that's where it shows who is ready for the next level. Now, say goodbye to this video as if you were closing a door behind you. But don't fool yourself. That door doesn't open for just anyone until I appear again. Move in silence, sharpen your weapons, and let the world think you are asleep. Because when you rise, it will already be too late for them. If you're walking this path with intention, subscribe to Psyche Nomad and keep turning solitude into strategy.